Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Shawn Wagoner. Derek Hunt is an award-winning glass artist and educator, a Fellow of the British Society of Master Glass Painters, a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and an accredited stained glass conservator. He designs and makes glass artworks for public spaces, private homes, and churches using methods to include traditional stained glass, as well as working with new techniques, such as screen and digital printing, to push the creative boundaries of the medium. In addition to creating and restoring stained glass works, Hunt hosts specialist master classes throughout the year at his studio in Leicestershire, teaching adults glass painting methods and techniques. Additionally, he runs a popular YouTube channel, making inspirational videos and tutorials, as well as podcasts with his favorite stained glass artists. His Instagram is part promotion and part inspiration for anyone interested in the medieval art and craft of stained glass. Says Hunt, "My ambition is to ensure new stained glass not only survives, but thrives in the 21st century, and the very best way to do that is to inspire the next generation." Born in 1962, Hunt is a mentor for stained glass artists on the BBC series Make It at Market. He earned his BA degree in Art and Design from Edinburgh Art School 1980 to 1984. He established his studio, Limelight Studios Ltd, in 1985. The artist won a Guildford Design Award for his 9-panel memorial window at St. Martin's Church, East Horsley, Guildford in 2025. Other notable works include a new north aisle window for St. Mary's Church, Melton Mowbray, in memory of John Plum, a major church benefactor. The Tree of Life includes the coat of arms for Melton Borough Council and Melton Mowbray Town Estate. Other local references include a pork pie and Stilton cheese and a dove with a brush dipped in red paint. This refers to an 1837 incident in which a drunk Marquis of Waterford and friends painted Melton Mowbray's toll bar and other buildings red. For John Rylands University Library, Manchester, Hunt created an 11-meter-tall glass sculpture entitled Totem, situated in the new extension to the Manchester University Library. Using a combination of digital printing and bonded handmade antique glass, the sculpture is backlit with an arrangement of LED lights. The design includes various visual references to the library's archive collections of important first edition books. Hunt has also undertaken stained glass conservation work on a number of notable buildings, including Glasgow Cathedral, Covington Cathedral, Kenilworth Castle, Warwickshire, Oscott College, Birmingham, Staveley Hall, Derbyshire, Ascoffey Hall, Lincolnshire, Manor Lodge, Sheffield, and Neville Holt Hall, Leicestershire. Says Hunt, "I help artists build their skills, confidence, and creative style in stained glass. If you want to learn all about creating beautiful stained glass, you've come to the right place. I'll help you navigate your creative journey, giving you the confidence to create. It's safe to say I've got lots of experience on everything to do with designing, making, and conserving stained glass. Every project is unique, with a focus on collaboration and community engagement being at the heart of my many commissions." Many thanks to the sponsors of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass: the American Glass Guild, Holy Frit, Yakagani Glass, Glass Accessories International, the Stained Glass Association of America, Sunshine Glassworks, Bentheim, and Delphi Glass. To find out more about our sponsors, visit talkingoutyourglass.com, click on Episodes Season 11, and Derek Hunt. A heartfelt thank you to our new Patreon co-producer of the show, James Stockman. Derek Hunt, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
My pleasure. It's great to be here, Shawn.
An award-winning stained glass artist, you've been running your own studio since 1985. What did you do before that?
Wow, it seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Yeah, so basically, I was at art school. I kind of was introduced to stained glass through art school. I was at Edinburgh Art College from 1980 to 84, and I went there with the ambition of becoming a graphic artist. You know, I kind of felt that that might have been a career path, that you could get a job at the end of it. And I think like a lot of people who go into the arts, you're never quite sure how you can make a living out of it or how you can make any money out of it. So I kind of felt that the decision was either to go into architecture and do architecture, or become an artist and go into art school. And I'm really grateful that I decided to go down the art school route. And it was a 4-year course. So my first year at the time, the course doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but you would do what's called a foundation year. So you'd essentially try a lot of different things. So obviously drawing and painting, life drawing classes. I tried a bit of sculpture. I tried a little bit of fashion design. And I thought for just for curiosity's sake, I'd try a little bit of stained glass. I didn't even know that you could still make stained glass anymore. And when I walked into the stained glass department, I was just blown away. You know, they had big, high windows and they had stained glass in the windows and all this color and all this light. I just immediately fell in love with it. And the idea of it being a very honest craft-based activity where you actually had to get good at something physical, you had to get good at making, just really appealed to me. We had a family friend who was a carpenter, and I remember growing up always being impressed by somebody who could make something with their hands. You know, he made high quality kind of furniture and things. And to me, it was just like it ticked a lot of boxes. And so I changed from doing graphic design to doing stained glass. And I did that for the next 3 years. So that took me from the age of 18 to the age of 22. And then I came down south from Edinburgh. I was based up there. I came down for a job in a stained glass studio and they needed a glass painter. So I came down and I felt really lucky to get the position because, you know, in the world of stained glass, it's very difficult to get an inroad into a professional company. Those openings don't happen very often. So I thought, yeah, I'll come down and work with this company. So I started there as their glass painter and designer. I was involved in a variety of big projects, but I didn't enjoy it, Sean. I just did not. You know, it was too much like a factory environment. I still had a student mentality, so I used to like coming in late and working late, which is the mindset of a student. And of course, if you're in a factory environment where you're clocking on and clocking off, they didn't like that. And so I was given the talk about coming in early and not staying late, because what I'd quite like to do would stay late at night, and they didn't like that because it was like a commercial business, perfectly understandably. But I kind of, after 9 months, decided I don't enjoy this. Principally, I think because the MD of the company at the time, and the company has now gone, unfortunately, but he said, "Oh, stained glass is like packing peas." And I just thought, it's packing peas? You know, it was like an assembly line in his mind. It was just like, you just make glass and you make it by the yard and you sell it by the yard. And that just wasn't my mindset. So I packed in after 9 months, and I think I had about £300 in my back pocket, which was my holiday pay. And I set up working on my own at the tender age of 24, I think it was. So my girlfriend at the time very kindly allowed me to use her garage, which was at the side of her house. So I bought a long table from a jewelry company that was selling a long table. And funnily enough, I've still got that jewelry table downstairs. I've had it for 40 years. And I don't know how long the jewelry company had it before that. So I bought that long table, and it had a terrible rickety old van that I strapped it to the roof rack of the van and brought it back to the garage and assembled it in this small space and started trying to earn a living, not knowing anybody in the city of Leicester, really not knowing anyone at all, because I'd only been in the city for 9 months. So that first year was difficult. That first year was really challenging. And I remember making little flyers and little leaflets and putting them through people's doors saying, "Look, I make stained glass and I can do restoration and repair of your front door panels," and things like that. So as you can imagine, that first year was quite slow and quite challenging. But I got through that first year, and then, the next year, I think I got my first church project for some conservation of some clerestory windows, and then it just sort of progressed slowly. It was difficult and challenging, but I knew it's what I wanted to do. And we can get on to one artist who was a major influence on me while I was at art school. We can talk about that maybe a little bit later on, but that's what I was doing, to answer your question. Before I was doing stained glass, I was at art school.
Well, so talk a little bit about what was the most crucial period of study, glass expert, or project you encountered in your understanding of stained glass processes and techniques.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think there, like a lot of things, it's a variety of different influences that all are at play. So my tutors were very influential. Douglas Hogg, who's a contemporary glass artist, still making amazing windows, has made windows for the Queen's Chapel, for the royal family, and he was a very big influence for me. And my previous lecturer before that was a chap called Sack Shaw, who is a very well-known, renowned, he's passed away, but a renowned glass artist as well, and another glass artist called John Blythe. Those were my three sort of tutors, and John Blythe was teaching heraldry and things like that. And Douglas Hogg, and continues to be a good friend. I mean, and I'm in correspondence with him regularly, and I see him at various functions and events. So he was a big influence. But I think the outstanding influence for me was Brian Clark, or Sir Brian Clark, who passed away recently. One of the reasons for me starting in the stained glass department was when I went up that day, as I was telling you, and I saw this amazing glass, and I had kind of had this shift of like, wow, could I possibly do stained glass rather than doing graphic design? I went down to the art school library and started looking through books to see what this whole thing, stained glass, was about. Because in my mind, it was just like a religious art form. It was just like an old style religious art form. It didn't really have any relevance to modern day art. And I found one of the first books by Brian Clark called Architectural Glass, and it was an absolute revelation. I suddenly saw amazing new glass in the Germanic style, this architectonic glass that was described back in the kind of late 70s and mid 80s as a new way of designing and creating glass that was instigated with the German artists and then kind of progressed across the world. I suddenly saw that you could make modern glass, and that was really inspirational for me. So in my final years, my dissertation, I decided to do it on Brian Clark. So I wrote to him and I said, look, I'm a student in Edinburgh. Now, can I come down and visit you and interview you? And I suppose that was my first ever podcast, because I borrowed a camera from the art school. I didn't know how to work it. And I took it down on the train and met with Brian Clark in his studio. And he was fantastic. He spent the whole day with me. Meeting him and seeing his studio and the way that he worked, he was only 30 when I interviewed him, and he'd already done amazing projects in the Middle East, and he'd written a couple of books. And of course, he went on to be this meteoric rock star in the stained glass world. And he was so generous with his time. And I thought that was a great way to, if you are an artist and you can make interesting stained glass for public buildings, that was my ambition. So that was my North Star, and that kept me going. So to answer your question, my art school's tutors were a big influence, and Brian Clark was a big influence too.
Well, you're a fellow of the British Society of Master Glass Painters, a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and an accredited glass conservator. Talk about these organizations and accomplishments and how they're important to your career in glass.
Okay, so the first would be the British Society of Master Glass Painters. Douglas Hogg, my tutor, was a fellow of the British Society of Master Glass Painters, and he was the one who introduced me to it and said, "Look, Derek, you should get involved with the British Society of Master Glass Painters, because they are the main institution that's promoting glass, both academically and in terms of exhibitions." And it was a sort of center for art historians, amateurs, interested parties to meet. And so I became a member at about sort of 20, I think. And I've been a member ever since. And I progressed through I became an associate a few years after that, and then eventually became a fellow. And it's by peer review. You become a fellow by being reviewed by the other fellows. That was my first introduction through art school to the BSMGP. And then later on, I became aware of the Worshipful Company of Glaziers, which is the second main body here in the UK that helps promote stained glass. And again, it's one of the guilds of London. So that would be, all of the wool merchants guild, the clockmakers guild, the guild of scientific instrument makers, all different types of guilds. So basically, I got involved with that group as well, because they are very active in providing help and support for up-and-coming artists. They had at the time what was the premier competition in the country, or internationally, I think, for stained glass, which was the Stevens competition, and people could apply from all over the world and did if they were, I think within the first 5 years of becoming professional artists, they could apply to the Stevens competition for bursaries and scholarships, travel scholarships, those kind of things. So again, it was a very important organization to be part of. So I joined that and became a freeman of the company, and then a liveryman. And I'm quite heavily involved in the Worshipful Company of Glaziers. I'm one of their arms is, one of the things that they do is they run a repository, a stained glass repository, which rescues stained glass from redundant churches. and public buildings, art that's of interest and of historic or artistic merit, and it's saved, and then it's relocated again in a new church or a new public space. It's a charity, so we don't charge for the stained glass, but sometimes people who take the glass on will give a donation to the charity to keep the lights on, basically. I'm quite heavily involved in that. I'm the chairman of that particular group, and I kind of feel that I'm helping to keep the historic aspects of stained glass from being lost. 'Cause I don't know what it's like in the States, but here in the UK, we're losing a lot of churches. They're closing down, and they're maybe getting sold on to developers who might not care or know that the glass in their churches might be historically interesting, might be particularly beautiful, or might be a rare piece of work. And so it might get lost or get sold onto the open market. So the repository is there to try and salvage glass so that it can still be enjoyed for future generations. So those are the two main organizations that I'm involved with. They're the two kind of main bodies here in the UK, and they both publish journal. Well, the BSMG publishes a journal, and the Worshipful Company continues to give out scholarships and traveling scholarships for various artists. And some of them come to me as well. They'll get a scholarship, or they'll get a traveling scholarship, and they'll say, I want to come and study at Derek's studio, for a period of time, and then I want to go on to study at another studio. So it will allow young students to then get experience in professional studios. So it's a great facilitator, and as you know, I'm all about passing on the skills to the next generation. So it's an important thing to be involved with. So yeah, happy to be involved with both the British Society of Master Glass Painters and the Worshipful Company of Glaziers.
We'll return to Derek Hunt in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the American Glass Guild, a nonprofit organization whose core mission is to work toward building an environment within the craft that both cultivates novices and facilitates experienced craftspeople and artisans to attain a higher level of expertise. AGG is an inclusive organization that actively seeks the participation of all people with an interest in decorative glass, its creation, preservation, and restoration. Their annual conference is a great way to receive education, make connections, and see the latest in the art glass world. Visit AmericanGlassGuild.org for more information. This episode is sponsored by Holy Frit. Discover Holy Frit, Justin Monroe's award-winning documentary, presented by Vitrionics. This inspiring and comedic story follows artist Tim Carey and glass maestro Narcissus Quagliata as they attempt to create the largest stained glass window in the world. Available now on Apple TV+, Amazon, and Google Play in the US, and Vimeo internationally. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Yakagani Glass, manufacturer of the world's finest art glass. Celebrating their 50th anniversary in 2026. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram to be the first to hear about their limited edition anniversary glass products and celebrations planned throughout the year, beginning with the formulation of their new gold pink replacement color. Tristan and Leanne would like to express their immense gratitude to the art glass community for their support and patronage throughout the years. Thank you from the crew at Yakagani Glass. For more information, yakaganiglass.com. And now, we return to Derek Hunt. So you've created many new large windows, including the Tree of Life window for St. Mary's Church in Milton. Is it pronounced Mowbray?
That's it. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. To celebrate the life and history of this UK market town, describe and discuss that project.
Okay, that was a lovely project to work on. Basically, I was shortlisted with 3 other artists to create a design which was a celebration of the town of Melton Mowbray. And I won that competition, which I was really pleased about. And I created a Tree of Life idea, but within the Tree of Life are a variety of different little vignettes. So Sir Malcolm Sargent, who is a well-known musician and conductor here in the UK, was a chorister at St. Mary's Church back in the day. So there was a reference to him. There was a reference to painting the town red. One of the birds in the tree had a little paintbrush painting one of the leaves red. The Leicestershire fox was climbing up the tree. So there's a whole lot of lots of other little references to that particular project. So It was a really enjoyable project because there's lots of little things hidden within the overarching design, which is the tree of life idea. And so I made it in my studio and installed it with a colleague, and it's still there today. And it was the last blank window, or window that hadn't got any stained glass in it, in that particular church. St. Mary's Church in Melton Mowbray was in the offing to be the cathedral for Leicestershire. It ended up being, Leicester Cathedral is in the city of Leicester now, but it was of the stature of a cathedral. It's really quite a large and impressive building, absolutely full of stained glass. And so this one single window hadn't been glazed. So it was a real privilege for me to put the final stained glass window in that particular church as a celebration for the town of Melton Mowbray. Yeah, it was a lovely project to work on. It was really nice that it was made in Leicestershire by a Leicestershire-based artist. And so it's got a lot of significance for me.
Describe and discuss your work at St. Dunstan's, which includes hand-painted, etched, and enameled glass.
So that's a completely different type of design. That's a much more contemporary design. St. Dunstan's Church in Woking was a brand new building. So again, I was approached by the architect to create 2 new windows. Each one was about 13 square meters, something like that in size, quite large. And both of them were in a sort of corner. So they were double glazed, tall double glazed units. And so I thought, I'm going to create a contemporary design using modern techniques that I hadn't really used, rather than traditional techniques of cutting glass and painting glass, similar to the Tree of Life in Melton Mowbray. So I got in contact with one of the German studios. Now, the German studios are world famous for producing some of the most exciting and interesting glass. They are technically wizards when it comes to creating glass work. I know there are some amazing studios stateside as well. Judson Studios and others are creating fantastic contemporary work as well, and are groundbreaking in their techniques. But that's the case also in Europe, especially 2 or 3 German studios. You've got Meyer's studio in Germany, you've got Peter's studios, and you've got Derek's studios. So I've worked with 2 of the 3 studios, and the first one was Derek's studios. So I went over there and I showed them this design, which was multi-layered, and it was using spray painting enamels, it was using double plating and treble plating, acid etching, screen printing, a whole host of techniques that I couldn't do in my own studio. So I went over there and they created these designs for me, and it was such an enjoyable experience. It was just so brilliant to be there because they have a really big setup and they have lots of international artists there. People from all over the world were bringing their projects to these studios. They do the project for you. So it was like being back at art school. You know, I was going over to different areas of the studio and seeing a Brazilian artist working on something, or an American artist working on something else. And they have conservation studios, the glass in from Chartres Cathedral. So it was just this amazing place to be part of. And I love collaboration, and I love the collaboration process with different studios, because I by no means know everything. There's a small part that I know, and there's a small part that I can contribute to a piece of work, maybe the vision and the idea, but then the application and all the techniques that are involved, bringing in those larger studios is a real revelation, and it's just a great experience. It's a very enjoyable experience. So that project was, I can't remember the date that was installed, but it was it was a start of a series of new projects working with European studios for contemporary buildings, not just new churches, but libraries and theaters and schools, and larger scale projects that were too big for me to make in my own studio, because I like to still make stained glass, but obviously there's a limit to how long clients will wait. And if the project's a larger project, then I don't want to keep them waiting for long periods of time. So I work in collaboration with those studios. So that was a groundbreaking project, St. Dunstan's Church, for me, for lots of reasons.
It seems like that might also be true of your work at John Rylands University Library in Manchester, which is an 11-meter tall glass sculpture entitled Totem, a combination of digital printing and bonded handmade antique glass. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so again, that was an international competition. I think probably about 2010 or 2012, something like that. The university library, the John Rylands University Library in Manchester, which was a new building, which had a great big tall 12-meter high blank wall within a new atrium area that they attached to a listed building, which had a shop and it was a kind of like an open space and a big roof light above. So they set about opening up this competition, and I think they got 100 odd artists, international artists from all over the world, putting forward proposals for an artwork. And I happened to win that competition. I put forward a proposal for a glass totem, which was an 11-meter high glass sculpture, using a technique that hadn't really been used before, or I hadn't used before. And I approached a company here in the UK and said, look, this is a little bit of a venture into the unknown. And so we devised a process together for creating this 11-meter high glass sculpture using screen printing techniques, using double placing with acid etching, and using bonding techniques, and then backlighting it with LED lights that were reactive to the available light in the room, so that when the light reduced throughout the day with this roof light, the outside light would get darker. The LED lights would come on and illuminate the glass sculpture. So it had like a daytime look, and then it had an evening look. So it was really exciting and a challenge to do this particular technique. And so it was a groundbreaking technique for the company that I was working with. And, you know, we used that technique on other projects as well. So again, that coming back to that idea of collaboration is a really interesting thing. I think if you're an artist and you're making art, collaborating with other makers, there's so much to be said for it. You know, it's just such an enriching experience. So that's, again, one of my, you know, I think possibly as a creative, most of us will have favorite projects. So that's certainly up there as one of my favorite projects, the 11-meter high glass sculpture, because it was a venture into the unknown, and it was a whole series of new techniques that I learned a lot from. I think it was a successful project, and you know, it kind of kickstarted a whole kind of series of other projects using techniques similar to that.
Was one of those projects your work at Richard Newcomb Court in Cambridge? Because you also used screen and digital printing for that work, right?
Yeah. No, that was a different collaboration with a different studio here in the UK. Proto Glass Studios is a renowned architectural glass studio, again, who work with a variety of different artists, nationally and internationally. And, you know, I'm all for supporting British studios as well, wherever I possibly can. So I've worked on a number of projects with Proto Studios over the years, and they principally do screen printing, and they're fantastic at interpreting your design as a screen printed idea and screen printing it using ceramic paints and ceramic pigments onto glass that can then be toughened, made into double glazed units, or in the instance that you're referring to in Cambridge, a roof light, a big kind of roof light over an entrance to a retirement home. So again, that was a national competition. Quite a lot of those projects were national competitions to create artworks. And I was referring to the fact that at the time it was a healthy sort of 2010 to 2015 or so, there was government funding to help kickstart public art projects. In the intervening years since then, that money has reduced and reduced and reduced to the point that there are so few available public art projects for artists to bid for now. And it says a lot about the lack of investment and the lack of the sort of myopic view that I think the political classes, regardless of which color they are, have for the arts, and the fact that they don't invest in the arts. And I just think that's so short-sighted. The arts bring so much, the creative industries bring so much to the table in terms of GDP and the whole quality of life experience for our country, your country, all of us. And I'd be interested to hear from you, Sean, whether it is as healthy a creative environment stateside for contemporary artists as it was maybe 10 years ago. What's your take on that?
It seems like it's not, like exactly what you're saying, like public art projects, the funding for that just isn't there. I mean, in the US, we have trouble funding even basic necessities like food programs like SNAP and medical programs and health insurance and Medicaid. We can't really even take care of our own population at this point in time. So the last thing they're going to do is put money into funding for the arts. I mean, I think there is still some, but it's definitely been reduced, especially since the 80s and 90s in the US. So that's certainly true.
That sounds like a similar story. I mean, I think stateside, one of the great things that I wish we had here was the percentage for art scheme. So I don't know if that's still in place, where a percentage of the cost of a new build of say, an airport terminal or a train terminal is given over to public art. That has certainly been a great seedbed for the creation of new artworks in the States. And we don't have that percentage for art here in the UK. So we are very much at the mercy of donors or developers, releasing funds. And again, we have the same arguments here about the core topics of, healthcare, funding our schools and funding our, all of those things are crucially important. But I think the quality of life is enhanced so much by the arts. And those are the things that the basics of life keep us alive, but the arts, that's what we live for. Music and poetry and the visual arts is what makes life valuable. And I think that it's been marginalized too much. And the justification really is what makes life valuable is our cultural heritage. And I just would like to see that better invested and more care taken, because we're losing the infrastructure here now. The infrastructure of art colleges, which taught all of our sort of craft skills, the applied arts, the tactile arts, the arts like, mosaic making and tapestry and glass blowing and stained glass. All of those have been reduced or marginalized in the pursuit of the digital arts. So art schools are moving towards the digital arts and, game design and things like that at the expense of analog skills. And I just think that's such a big mistake, because we're losing that infrastructure. Definitely here in the UK, stained glass isn't being taught at scale and in the depth that it was when I had the privilege of having a free education. I had a free education at art school. My art school fees were paid. It's a big ask if you're in the creative world to rack up lots of college debt or university debt and then try and find a career and move on from there. So it's challenging times, and I think our governments could do far more than they do at the moment to prime pump the art industries, by giving seed money to kind of just keep these infrastructures alive, so that we can help that next generation to discover all of the things that we have discovered.
We'll return to Derek Hunt in just a moment. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Toyo Super Cutters, preferred by glass artists worldwide. Toyo is distributed by Glass Accessories International on the web at glassaccessories.com, where you can check out the entire line of professional quality Toyo glass cutters. Find your long-lasting cutter in a color and handle style that meets your needs at an authorized Toyo dealer. Now on Instagram at Toyo Super Cutters. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by the Stained Glass Association of America. Since 1903, the SGAA has cultivated a growing community of members across the United States who share a passion for art glass. Whether you've recently discovered the beauty of leaded, stained, or ornamental glass, or you've been practicing the craft for a lifetime, the SGAA welcomes you to join the oldest and most vibrant membership organization dedicated to the illumination of stained glass. Learn more and become a member or subscribe at stainedglass.org. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass podcast is sponsored by Bentheim, a leader in specialty architectural glass and the exclusive supplier of Lambert's mouth-blown glass in America. Bentheim is the preferred choice by artists and architects across the nation. For more information, visit bentheim.com. And now, we return to Derek Hunt. I'm wondering if you were surprised that at Richard Newcomb Court that they were willing to use glass as a roof structure.
Well, again, that was an opportunity that arose because there was a sum of money made available for an artwork. So it was a really lovely project. So that was one of my first community engagement projects. Community engagement is a phrase that's used a lot in public art. And it basically means, you as an artist engage with your local community to find out what they really want that artwork to do. What is it in commissioning an artwork that they want it to achieve, and understanding what their needs are and what their aspirations are and what their hopes are, rather than simply parachuting a design into a community and saying, well, this is my artwork, take it kind of thing. It's much more collective. endeavor where the artist and the community work together, moving forward to kind of find the best way of articulating the needs and aspirations of the community for an artwork. So that, in that particular instance, it was a care home, and they wanted a reference to memory because quite a few of the residents were old and their memory was going. And so they said, look, let's create an artwork that referred to memories. Basically, I devised this artwork based on their favorite memory from their childhood. So getting the residents to write letters to me about their favorite memories. So maybe, a garden swing that they used to like swinging on, or maybe their bedroom or their favorite pet, or somewhere that they would go with their families. And we involved the community. So local primary school children were brought in to the care home as well, and they interviewed the old folk and got them to write that. They recorded their answers and they got them to write down their memories of their childhood. So the children were kind of, their generation were hearing what previous generations' childhoods were like. So that was an enriching experience for both the children at school and the older people. And we brought in local historians and we brought in the local museum. So there was a very much an enrichment from that local community. And part of the design has a Chinese letter on it, a character, which is the Chinese character for home. So again, that's bringing back the kind of idea of home and nurturing and memories that the Chinese residents have for their home. And so some of the letters make an appearance in the finished artwork. So you could see handwritten text on the canopy, which refers to childhood memories from some of the residents. So there's a lot, again, built into that finished piece that refers to community, to memory. And because it was such a detailed piece of work, it had to be screen printed. So I went to Proto Studios, as I mentioned, and they did a fantastic job and they made it for me and installed it. So yeah, I mean, that was the first of what has been quite a number of community engagement public art projects since then. And I find that whole experience of doing a deep dive into a community really, really rewarding and fulfilling for hopefully for all parties. You know, it's a voyage of adventure. It's a kind of a leap of faith because we don't know what the outcome is going to be until we get there. And that's what's exciting about it.
So, in addition to all of these incredible, groundbreaking projects, you also teach classes. Tell us a bit about when and why you started teaching.
So during lockdown, like all of us, I'm sure you were the same, we were kind of stuck in for a long period of time. And I had work for quite a while. So I have a studio here next to my house. I've been here for about 25 years. And eventually I ran out of things to do. So one of my brothers, my middle brother, lives in Australia, and we used to play video games together, during the day because we had nothing else to do. And one day he said, look there, why don't you start making YouTube videos? You know, you're sitting in your studio, you've got stuff to kind of, why don't you just start doing it? So he planted the idea in my head. So sort of 2021, I did some research and I kind of decided, okay, I need to buy a decent camera, which essentially was my phone. I need to buy a microphone. And so I bought a microphone. I bought an iPhone, and I sat down and I pressed play and I recorded my first sort of serious YouTube video. And I had a YouTube channel for about 8 years before that, and I posted, like a lot of people, maybe posted 1 or 2 videos on it. And I got about 7 views or 8 views, and I thought, it's not for me kind of thing. It's okay. But I didn't really take it seriously. But then coming out of lockdown, I decided, why not pass on the skills? Why not actually do something useful in this lockdown and actually pass on the things that I've learned over what was at that time sort of 36 years of designing and making stained glass windows and doing conservation work as well. I'm an accredited conservator, so I do historic glass work as well. I write condition reports for historic glass. And so I wear different hats, and I thought, yeah, that's something that I want to do. So the YouTube channel came about at a sort of time when I was thinking about really passing on the skills. And so I started teaching. I started teaching in my studio. I'm doing YouTube videos. And that first YouTube video, I think when I posted it out, within a week or so, I got something like 400 subscribers. And I thought, wow, people really want to learn. They want to learn about stained glass. And there's a kind of like a lack of that kind of information out there. So that was the kind of kernel of the idea to really pass on the skills to that next generation. As we touched on earlier in our conversation, they're not really being taught in depth to the same extent that they have been. And I think we're not doing a service to the next generation of creatives in not kind of giving our best effort to giving them the resources to decide whether they want to do stained glass. Many of them will not decide to do stained glass. That's absolutely fine. The information that I'm putting out there is for those people that are keen or are inspired to, or are just curious to see what their own creations might look like represented in glass, you know. So I started teaching in my studio, and I started teaching tutorials on my YouTube channel. And then I was approached by Ely Stained Glass Museum at Ely Cathedral, which is about an hour and a half's drive from here, to do teaching there as well. So I teach regularly there for the last few years. I don't know how many years it is now. I think it was actually pre-COVID that I was teaching there. And so I've continued doing that. And my main mission really now is to inspire that next generation to, not for stained glass, not only to survive, but to thrive in the 21st century. And the best way to do that is to inspire that next generation to take up stained glass, so that they're making stained glass and reinventing it. I hope they reinvent it in ways that we haven't even dreamt of yet. You know, so that's what I'm excited about that. Sculptors and graffiti artists and photographers coming into stained glass and reinventing it, because my goodness, we do need it to be taken by the scruff of the neck and reinvented.
Yes. So you decided to go online right away with your teaching in your classes.
So I think I was probably teaching pre-COVID, and then the YouTube came in sort of just towards the end of COVID. And so I do those two things together now. They're both part of the same thing. They're both part of the same kind of mission to pass on the skills. And over the years, I've really kind of moved much more into teaching online. So I now have a variety of different online courses. The best way to learn, I think, always is in person. So if you can get to a masterclass with me here in my studio, or if you can go to another, there's some fantastic glass painters in the States who are teaching glass painting as well. Rita Schimmelfarb is doing some amazing work, and other artists as well. And in Europe, there are some fantastic glass artists, again, also here in the UK, teaching glass painting. If you can get to those in person, I think that's the best method. But if you can't, and many people can't, they still want to learn. So providing online resources and online courses is a good alternative, and many people just can't make it across. So I've really thrown myself into that, and I'm kind of pivoting more and more after having done 40 years of kind of designing and making and installing windows. I'm pivoting much more towards passing on the skills in a variety of different forms and trying to inspire that next generation. And part of that is to interview other artists. I mean, I just love doing what we're doing today. You know, I'm really keen to talk to you about your experience in the glass world. You have a fantastic, deep understanding of a variety of different glass disciplines in the States. And I'd love to hear about your kind of experience of how you see this world of glass developing. Because I think, you know, these online resources are a tool and an instrument that we can use to our advantage. A lot of people don't like social media, and I completely understand that. They want nothing to do with it. I completely get that. But I think increasingly our audiences are online, and our audiences are reaching for their information to their phones, first of all. So in a way, we've got to be there for them. You know, we've got to kind of be there to give them good advice and good help and good resources, with the ambition that they will somewhere along the line decide to engage more openly with glass, whether it's glass blowing or slumping, fusing, or stained glass work. You know, that's the ambition. So I'm really devoting a lot more of my time to that work nowadays.
So have you ever had a video or a post go viral?
I suppose. I mean, it's funny, that term viral. I mean, I'm not quite sure what it means.
I hate it.
I know. I don't really know what it means. I have videos that are like have 500,000 views and things like that. Yeah, it's the interesting thing for me is that it's not about, for me anyway, going viral or building up lots and lots of subscribers and things like that. It's more about reaching the people that would like this information and by definition, that's a relatively small audience. It's quite specialized. I do a lot of glass painting tutorials and maybe some design tutorials. And the ones that are by far the most popular and the ones that get the 500,000 views tends to be the fundamentals. So how to cut glass, how to cut glass, how to solder lead windows together, design windows, those kind of core principles. There's a big appetite for that. And YouTube is fantastic for delivering that kind of content because essentially YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the planet behind Google, and Google own YouTube. So between Google and YouTube, the vast majority of questions that get put up onto the internet are answered by YouTube and by Google. So if you want to reach people with good quality information, that's where you kind of need to be. To a lesser extent, although it's a very healthy group of followers on other social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, YouTube is my baby. That's the kind of thing that is my principal way of reaching people. But up and coming, close on its heels, is Facebook, which is incredibly proactive. People are very chatty and communicative on Facebook, and there are so many good quality groups out there. There are some toxic groups as well, which I stay clear of. But, Glass Painting 2.0, for example, I got to give them a shout out for being a really high quality Facebook page with a lot of professionals who are in there sharing and sharing their knowledge, sharing their understanding, asking questions, and being open. And I think that lack of gatekeeping of knowledge is very, very important moving forward. I think if we don't open up this information to that next generation, it will die with us, because I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm of an age where I went to art school, I set up a studio, and many of the studios here in the UK were set up by art students who went through the deep dive art school process and went on to set up studios. The art schools here in the UK have pretty much abandoned doing these applied arts. Swansea College of Art is still doing stained glass, but as a module, and they do a great job. But that kind of deep dive isn't there anymore. And as a consequence, when we look behind us, that next generation of glass artists who are coming into the profession is just much, much smaller than it used to be. So yeah, we owe it to that generation to try and just offer them the opportunity to discover stained glass. And that's done through social media.
What inspires your artist spotlights? Like, you've had Martin Donlin and Peaky McClure and even some U.S. artists like Judith Schachter on your podcast to do a feature on that artist. What inspires that approach for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I absolutely love. I have a podcast called The Creative Experience, which principally goes out on YouTube. It also goes out on Spotify. Doesn't rival your podcast by any means, Sean, but I'm trying to kind of put that information out there as well. And I just love meeting my glass heroes. I mean, the people that I interview, I love their work. That's the first thing. And I want to showcase them. I want to showcase what they do to a wider audience. And so I get them to talk about their projects. I get them to kind of, like this, it's just a kind of an open conversation that is done usually over the internet like this for international artists. And then here in the UK, I will visit artists in person and I do studio tours. And my audiences love studio tours, as I do. It's just going around to another artist, seeing what they do, how they work, how they set up their kind of workspace, how they move around in it. You learn so much by just seeing how another artist works. I love doing all of that. And so the podcast for me, the creative experience, is a way of showcasing the best international artists out there, getting them to talk about their work, documenting it so that it's a piece of documented sort of contemporary history, where they're getting to speak about their work at length. So it's maybe a 40-minute interview, and we'll talk about their current projects. I usually ask them towards the end of the video to talk about the 3 favorite projects or the 3 significant projects, which again can reveal a lot about their motivations or their values. And it'll be surprising that it might not be their famous projects or the ones that they're best known for. They might particularly love a small project that just for them means the world to them. And so I love learning those things creative experience interviewing other artists. I try to have a variety of different sort of chapters or themes within the YouTube channel. So there'll be tutorials as one set of videos. There'll be inspirational videos as another set. There'll be studio tours as another one. There'll be the podcast. And then there'll be product reviews. So I'll do product reviews of glass cutters or grinders or soldering irons. A lot of the fundamentals people still want to know. People are still coming into it from the hobby market, especially in the States. It's a very active, healthy hobby market stateside. So that question starts to get answered into YouTube and Google. What is the best soldering iron? How do I use solder? How do I cut glass? So that's when you kind of are there to provide them with those answers. So it's sort of building up a reservoir of knowledge, a reservoir of inspirational videos and tutorials. That I think is a worthwhile endeavor, and that's what keeps me excited and motivated to do it more.
Your materials are also well produced, and I'm wondering, is that something you landed on right away, or what led to you sort of getting to this current aesthetic signature that you have?
That's very kind of you to say. So I kind of took it quite seriously, the whole YouTube thing. As I say, coming out of lockdown, I enrolled in a kind of a YouTube academy to kind of learn how to do it. So there's quite a lot. It's more than just pressing the record button. Basically, there's a whole kind of thumbnail thing. There's the whole thing about keywords and titles and learning. It takes a long time to learn, and I'm still learning it. But there's a method and there's a kind of a way. And so I tried to hit the ground running to try and put all of that in place with my first YouTube video. And that first YouTube video is still up there, and it's got a lot of views, and people still comment on it. And the amazing thing about what's called evergreen content that maybe has been up there for 4 years and is still getting inquiries and still views and still comments, is that if the sound is good and the visuals are clear, and it is well paced, people will keep watching it, and it will still be served up to an audience. So for me, getting the quality is a big part of it. I've taken down videos where the sound hasn't been good. I mean, sometimes gremlins get in the works. I don't know if you've ever had that, Sean, but you'll do recording and then you'll play it back, and suddenly there'll be something happening in the background. You think, oh my gosh, that's going to really destroy the whole take. Do you get that?
Yes, for sure. I just had one with Mick Mylan. I just started my YouTube channel in October, and I'm not a super high-tech person, so I'm still learning too. That's why I'm asking you all these questions, because your stuff all looks so good. But yes, you can have a bad recording or a bad video, and it's just really tricky to work around all that stuff.
Yeah, it is. Especially, I mean, you can put it through AI and filters and kind of improve it to an extent. But
If you know how to do that.
yeah, I know it's all a learning experience. I mean, to be honest, Sean, I love learning about something new. I mean, as I say, I've been doing stained glass for a long time, and at this point in my life, to be learning a completely new discipline is fantastic. I absolutely love it. And YouTube is kind of like a very supportive organization. I go down to YouTube our Google headquarters in London, and I have a manager who kind of meets with me, and we do conferences with other YouTubers, and it's a very supportive environment because they recognize that all YouTubers are essentially working from the bedroom on their own or working from the spare room on their own, and it can be a very isolating experience. And it's really nice to kind of get embraced by the wider community, and it has opened doors for me that I've had television work on different different channels as a result of my social media, because I think researchers will go online if they're looking for a mentor or a stained glass somebody for something. They'll immediately go onto Instagram, or they'll go onto Facebook, or and if you're there, you stand a better chance to contribute in some way. So it has opened up so many doors in terms of a wider community. I just love talking with international artists. America in particular, you guys are amazing. You are so open and curious and friendly and interested, and I can learn so much from you as well, and so much from what's happening in the States. You have a different market to the European market. You have a much larger hobby market, but you have a bigger infrastructure as well. that supports that hobby market. So the glass shops, your glass suppliers, all of your material suppliers is probably a much more mature marketplace than it is in here in the UK. We have some great suppliers also, and we have in Europe as well. But I think in the States, I can see it as a very mature marketplace for the hobby market. Interestingly, when it comes to the higher end sort of stained glass work, there seems to be fewer professional studios doing glass painting work, which did surprise me.
I know that we do have a huge amount of private studios and people working from their own spaces and starting their own studios and own businesses, for sure. I think we probably used to have more restoration and painting studios than we do now.
Yeah, but there's a big appetite for it, and I think a lot of people who are coming up through the hobby market and they maybe want to take it more seriously, they're doing maybe fused work or copper foil work. They want to introduce pictorial or representational imagery into their work, so they're naturally navigating their way towards glass painting or screen printing as a way forward. So, that's a really big sort of market of interest in the States for that type of work. So, I love meeting fellow creatives from the States and from Europe and further afield who are interested in developing their glass painting skills. That's kind of the area that I sort of specialize in, although I do lots of kind of general tutorials as well. What I don't get involved with is fusing and slumping and frit work, etc. I see that as an entirely different set of skills, and I don't pretend to know anything about it. You've got some amazing artists stateside, like Tim Carey, for example, produced that amazing film Holy Frit, which is available all over the world now on Netflix, etc. I actually interviewed Tim Carey on my podcast, an amazing guy, and also doing a lot of online courses. And I have a huge respect for his kind of reinvention of fused glass combined with glass painting, along with Narcissus Quagliata, who I met on a number of occasions years ago when I was thinking of moving to the States. I visited Narcissus Quagliata at his studios in Oakland, California, and spent the time with him. Fascinating guy, and I've sort of followed his career. I mean, he's in his 80s now, and he's doing online courses as well. So there's a lot of people like myself putting this information out into the public domain. I'm conscious of, I have a limited set of experience. I'm okay at some things, and I can pass on the skills that I've learned, but I'm essentially a student at heart, and I love learning new things. And so I've still got lots and lots to learn from the glass blowing community and the fusing community as well.
We'll return to Derek Hunt in just a moment. This episode is sponsored by Sunshine Glassworks. Sunshine Glassworks has been supplying materials to the art glass community since 1979. Whether you are an avid hobbyist or a commercial studio, you will find the glass and supplies you need, served with knowledgeable support and efficient shipping. Sunshine stocks a broad range of paints, stains, and enamels from Rouchet, as well as Fuse Master enamels. Visit sunshineglass.com for complete information. Delphi Glass, one-stop shopping for all your art glass needs. Start creating in glass today with complete starter kits, more glass than you can imagine, and in-person and online classes. Find them at delphiglass.com. Now back to Derek Hunt. So most of your students that take your courses on YouTube, online classes, or in-person master classes, they're interested in painting, or are there other things that those students want to learn?
So yeah, for a while I was doing quite a few years, I was teaching stained glass as well. But then I kind of realized that there are access to courses up and down the country on learning stained glass or learning copper foil work. So I wanted to concentrate, my time on the things that are not taught to the same extent. So I gravitated away from regular, like teaching people to make stained glass windows, to specializing in glass painting. So I now do master classes in traditional glass painting, which is like a 2-day course in glass painting, which is a real deep dive into all of the fundamentals of glass paintings, working with blacks, browns, and silver stains, and dipping pen work, and shading and texturizing. And I've started doing another masterclass on enamel painting. So the world of enamels is new, and it's a well-established world, but it's not getting taught. And there's a tremendous lack of resources and good quality information out in the public domain about using enamels. So I started experimenting on my own with working with enamels. I reached out to all the enamel suppliers in the States and in Europe and asked them for samples of all the enamels towards the end of last year. And then at the beginning of this year, I experimented with all of those enamels with the view of kind of putting a course together to try and pass on what I've discovered and what I've learned with enamel painting work. So that has also been like a very popular 2-day masterclass in enamel painting. And I've recently just started a 4-day masterclass, which combines glass painting skills and enamel painting skills. And that's pretty much sold out as well. So putting on an online course is a way of being able to offer that knowledge base to a wider audience as well. So yeah, it's now pretty much all glass painting skills that I spend my time passing on.
Who are most of your students and what are their goals in glass?
So it's a really interesting variety of fellow creatives who come in my course. Many are glass artists of one sort or another. Perhaps they're working in fused glass or slumped glass. Perhaps they're working in copper foil. Or perhaps they are not working in glass at all and just want to start. I've had book illustrators and poets and scientists, doctors, people who are kind of interested in it coming onto it as well. So it's a real wide span. Also, quite a number of professional glass artists who maybe have learned glass painting at art school or were working in a studio for a number of years doing glass painting and simply want a refresher. They just want to refresh their skills or they just want a different perspective. A lot of glass painters are very good who come on the course and they're just curious, as I am, with other artists to see how they do it. You know, I've been on glass painting courses with other artists and learned some amazing things because there's definitely more than one way to do it. And what I teach is just my discoveries and the way that I've learned how to do it. But I'm always very keen to say, look, there's many ways you can make marks on glass. And the techniques and methods that I show are just one way to do it. The creatives come on the course from all over the world. I get quite a lot of people obviously from the UK because I'm a UK-based studio, but I get a lot of students who come from the States and I'm absolutely honored. They will fly over from the States just to do the course and fly back home again, which I just think is like such an amazing investment in their own education and in their own progression. And I'm honored that they do that. Students from Australia, from Europe, from the Middle East. I had 2 students about a month ago from the Middle East. So people fly in from all over to do the course. And I obviously want to give them the best that I possibly can because I'm conscious of the fact that we're all creatives. And, you know, if you're going to invest in yourself, you want to get the best value you can. So I really try and give people as high quality courses as I can. And I keep in contact with all of them afterwards. So I'm in correspondence with many of my students afterwards and they'll keep in correspondence with me. And I find that this creative community is a growing community. And in the last sort of 5 months or so, I've started to do online live feeds on my YouTube channel once a week at 8:30 p.m. UK time on a Tuesday night to this wonderful, amazing creative community. And regulars come in from all over the world. You know, as I've said, I mentioned lots of students from the States and from here in the UK and further afield will tune in. And you know, it's just fantastic. It's just a time for us. It's for me to answer questions live on the stream so people can put questions in live. I have a couple of moderators who will come on and do background research for me. If I can't answer a question, there's some amazing artists who come on, like Petri Anderson, for example, or Charlotte Savo, Kate Lavender, 2 students who I've mentored in the past will come on and help mentor the stream. And so it's just a great opportunity for us collectively to spend time together in this kind of amazing sort of internet space that we all occupy when we come online. It's this kind of strange world that we all occupy that's not in any one country. It's all over the place all at the same time. And I find all of that fascinating. So yeah, you know, it's all about the creative community and it's all about trying to help this community develop and grow and stay curious and stay interested in the world of glass.
So what else is coming up for you in 2026? I know you've got some glass painting courses that are going to come out in January.
Yeah, so I'm busy filming those at the moment. It takes a long time to film the courses because basically, as you know, it's process driven. So as you paint a section, it then goes into the kiln and it comes back out and then I talk about that. So these courses are hosted on a platform called Kajabi, which is a kind of an international platform for hosting courses. And it allows you to kind of put those courses up and create a database of information. And I just find it a very useful way of kind of keeping data protection good, because obviously with data protection and all those kind of things, you have to be very scrupulous about the information that you hold for people. And I use PayPal, which is a secure way of doing it. So that's what I'm kind of spending my time on at the moment, putting another course together for that. I've just launched the 4-day masterclass, so I'm taking sort of information on that with a view of putting out more masterclasses in the new year. And also I really need to, because I've been spending a long time putting this course together, I want to kind of reinvest my time in YouTube and start putting out more YouTube specific courses, which will be going back to the fundamentals of, how to cut glass, how to design stained glass windows, what kind of soldering iron to use, because there's always new people coming on asking those kind of questions. I want to do more artist interviews. I've lined up a few artists to go and visit. We've already been in correspondence, and come the new year, I'm going to go down and visit these studios and talk to these artists and do more podcasts with them. So I'm still doing some TV work. I've just finished filming some TV work again for the BBC. There's a variety of different things happening. I had a couple of articles in the summer edition of this Stained Glass Association of America's summer magazine, which I was very honored that they asked me to write an article on Sir Brian Clark, talking about his legacy. We sadly lost him earlier on this year, a huge, big influence on my life and many, many other creatives. And then they did a feature on my work as well. So busy doing those kind of things and just really kind of excited to engage with this amazing creative community. And I'm delighted that you asked me to come on your podcast. I love the work that you're doing, Sean, as well. I wonder if I could ask you a question about how you see the future of glass stateside. Do you see it on the ascendancy? Is it declining? What's your take? Because you have this amazing overview of a lot of different disciplines.
I think it varies from what format you're working with glass in. And I think from my perspective, stained glass particularly is either experiencing some kind of resurgence or there's just sort of this extra excitement for stained glass right now. And I think it has a lot to do with kind of why it first became popular in the 70s, people wanting to work with their hands. And it just has this inherent beauty. Its accessibility, I think, makes it also appealing to people who want to work on something at home, who want stained glass, but maybe can't afford to buy it themselves. They want to learn how to make something on their own. I just interviewed 2 younger artists, Hannah Hastings and Carissa Gregorio, and their excitement and their love for the medium is just really inspirational. So I feel really good about especially stained glass going into the future. I think it's got as much popularity and appeal as it ever did. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I watched Hannah Hastings, your podcast with Hannah Hastings, which was fantastic. And she did her big drop, I think on the 6th of December this year, where she created all of her pieces and was selling them on Instagram. It was fantastic to see. And I think people like, people who are putting their shops online are doing great guns. And I think that embracing of social media, is an important factor moving forward. And I think that market stateside especially is very healthy, and a lot of artists are looking to see the most successful Instagrammers who are producing work for the domestic market, new pieces of glass, smaller pieces that are maybe gift items or things that could be hung in windows. I mean, that is the kind of the groundwork that builds that next generation, because as these creatives come in and they learn those skills in different disciplines, they can become hungry to develop their own natural skills, to develop their own disciplines. So they'll eventually expand and develop the things that they do as well. Not everyone. I mean, a lot of people will stay in their particular niche and be very happy doing their work on a hobby level. But I see quite a lot of people developing those hobbies bit by bit into kind of enterprises where they can earn a revenue. And that I find very exciting. The new artists who are showing their work, especially on places like Instagram, I find particularly interesting. And I reach out to them and, I'm interested to kind of showcase their work as well as a way of showing the potential of glass. I just find that whole thing very interesting. I think here in the UK, we are going through challenging times. I think specifically, we referred to earlier the fact that academic study, the access to academic, good quality courses is hard to come by. And a lot of artists who want to develop their skills have to kind of navigate their own route. There's not a clear roadmap if you want to get into the world of stained glass here in the UK. So organizations like the BSMGP and the Worshipful Company of Glaziers are helping creators by giving them grants and bursaries to go to studios and learn. But it's a very bitty kind of way forward, that kind of piecemeal adding courses and times the studios where they can. So I'd like to see that better funded. I'd like to see the creators be given a better roadmap, a better funded roadmap, in order to spend longer periods of time in studios and do a proper deep dive into the craft of stained glass. Because here in the UK, it's now on the endangered list, the red list here in the UK. The charity Heritage Crafts listed it a couple of years ago. And it's a mixed blessing. A lot of people were unhappy about it being on the list. They feel that it's negative or pessimistic to put it on the endangered list. But I think it opens up the conversation that needs to be had. A lot of professionals have known for a long time that stained glass is up against it in terms of the prohibitively expensive cost of materials, the access to materials, the specialist suppliers who are leaving the market. Specialist glass paint makers have recently just left the painting market and sold their name to FuseMaster. Now, FuseMaster have been making enamels and paints, but it's a stateside product. I don't really use it very much here in the UK. So it'd be interesting to see what FuseMaster do with the Reusch brand. But Reusch have been my go-to paint, an American-based paint owned by Schilling, and I've used them for decades, and they have made fantastic paints and stains and enamels, and I'm dismayed that they've left the marketplace. If you read the room, you'll see that it's challenging. Glass suppliers are still there servicing the hobby market, but we need to bring more people into the world of stained glass to kind of help those suppliers find new markets and to sell to new buyers of glass paints and stains and people who need to buy glass, etc. So, I think the race is on for all of us to find those new creators and encourage them to come into this marketplace. The marketplace for stained glass, which was essentially a cottage industry anyway, has shrunk. I think it's got smaller. I think there are fewer studios and fewer people making it. And that's not a pessimistic thing to say. I think it's just a realistic kind of outlook, especially here in the UK. The people that are making stained glass and doing it are fantastic, and I applaud them to the rooftops for doing it, but I think we need to kind of galvanize ourselves to kind of help bring more people into it. So yeah, it's great the work that you're doing as well, Sean. I really appreciate the fact that you're showcasing artists of all different types. Sean, I'm fascinated to know what got you into doing podcasting. What was the motivation for you starting this amazing podcast of yours?
Well, as you may know, I was the editor of a glass magazine for 32 years. And at some point, I just felt like people don't have time to read. They're not reading anything. I'm spending all this time writing 2,200 word articles on glass artists and processes, and I don't think anyone's reading them. And it was 2016, and there wasn't a glass podcast out there. So I thought I should teach myself how to do this and do a podcast, because my favorite part of what I was doing was researching an artist, coming up with questions, and then having the conversation. It certainly wasn't the writing part. That was very time consuming and challenging. Writing's a love-hate thing, right? So it just seemed to make sense to start focusing on the parts of it I loved, start a podcast because there wasn't one, and, have my work become more about the conversation than the writing.
Fascinating. And how do you find the process of interviewing artists? Because some artists are shy, or some artists express themselves perhaps more through their work than the spoken word. Do you find that a mixed bag in terms of interviewing artists?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes people try to write down their answers, like every single word, and then read them. And that just doesn't usually work very well. But for the most part, people are pretty, I mean, I think I'm maybe a relaxing person to get to talk to. It's not stressful or anything, and they're in their own space. And for the most part, people kind of relax into it. And if it's been problematic, a lot of times I'll suggest at about question 3, let's start over and go back to question 1 and just redo the first little nervous section. But I haven't had to do that very often.
That's interesting. I actually find some of the best nuggets as well are towards the end of the conversation when people are relaxed and you just get them kind of, as you say, relaxing into it. It's more like a meeting in a cafe over a cup of coffee, isn't it?
It is.
Having a chat, you know?
Yeah.
I find it amazing that we can do this in real time. It's kind of, we are almost in the same room, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was
It's
also
a
curious
blessing.
to hear, I was also curious to learn about this amazing music that is played at the beginning of your podcast. Do tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like many people, I am a huge fan of John Lennon, and I think it's a unique idea and talent and skill and approach to write songs about love for humanity, not necessarily romantic love, but love for the world and love for the space that we're in and love for just being here with each other. And I was thinking about how unusual a topic that is today and for a long time. Really, I think, that was a focus of a lot of music in the 60s and 70s, which is why I love that music so much. And so I wanted to try to write something that was similar, that was about that kind of love and that kind of philosophy and sort of with, a nod to John Lennon in my mind. And so that's the name of the song that the podcast starts with, is Be Your Eternity. And when people sign up to my Patreon, I send them the song as an MP3 as their first, gift or reward for becoming a Patreon co-producer of Talking Out Your Glass. They get the song. So,
Wow.
and I send them the lyrics and I sort of explain all this to them.
That is fantastic. And do you perform this live? Do you
I have.
concerts and things?
Yes. I've kind of moved on from my original music, which was under the label of Sean Wagner and the Tumbleweeds. And I have a blues band now called Blue Recluse. And so I do a lot more blues singing in my current iteration.
Fantastic. So where do you perform? Where do you and your band perform?
We live in small town Colorado, so we perform all over the mountains, and we also do stuff online at different radio shows and TV shows and that kind of stuff. And you can stream our album, Rarely Fatal, any place where you stream, Spotify, Amazon Music, that kind of thing. Mostly original songs.
That is fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant. You also mentioned Patreon. So when did you start Patreon? What was the motivation for doing that?
I started Patreon, I think like 4 or 5 years ago. I would think I was just trying to, as you know, or maybe you don't, but as I know, podcasting about glass is not necessarily a lucrative business. And so anywhere where you can try to get your show funded and what you're doing funded, I tried to figure out different funding sources without making people pay a subscription for the podcast, because I just wanted that always to be free so that anyone could access it for all time and listen to it whenever they wanted to. So I didn't want to go that route, but I thought, well, maybe there's people out there that would like to support the show. I produce an extra episode that's called 5 on the Side, where I asked artists questions like, if you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? Or if you could invite 3 artists to dinner, who would they be and why? Those kind of questions. And so that's the extra episode that people get for becoming a Patreon supporter of the podcast.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear you say that, because I recently started a membership for my YouTube channel. I don't use Patreon, but it was a way of kind of followers sort of supporting. And I think I'm sure you feel the same way, that if people like your content, they're happy to support. And it's, it's small sums of money in terms of, the monthly contributions, but it's kind of like a vote of confidence, isn't it? It makes you feel like, yeah, people are getting value from it and they want to support the work that you're doing, because it takes a long time to put podcasts together, and also to do the background research and to do the emailing back and forward and setting up interviews. It's a lot of your time, isn't it?
It is. It takes a lot of time. And if 100 people signed up for your Patreon and just pitched in $5 per month, it could be life-changing. And I mean, I certainly haven't reached that point yet. I haven't really noticed a huge difference by doing Patreon, but I do love doing that extra episode. And I do so appreciate everybody who is on there and who is helping support Talking Out Your Glass podcast. Because for all of us that are supporting the glass arts, we're helping each other. We're lifting the whole thing up all together for ourselves and for the whole glass industry. And I think that's been what's so amazing about glass. The whole glass world is just that way. We all seem to really love each other, really enjoy each other, really want to support each other. And it feels good to be a part of that. We have a phrase here called geek out on glass. Do you guys have that over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm definitely a glass geek.
Me too. And I love geeking out on glass. So yeah, it serves its purpose.
Oh, yeah. Well, from one geek to another, it's been absolutely fantastic spending time with you today, Sean. Thank you again so much for asking me onto your podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Derek. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to Talking Out Your Glass. Many thanks to our sponsors, the American Glass Guild, Holy Frit, Yakagani Glass, Glass Accessories International, the Stained Glass Association of America, Bentime, Sunshine Glassworks, and Delphi Glass. To find out more about this podcast, visit talkingoutyourglass.com, where you'll find all 10 seasons of the show, artist images, and more. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Happy New Year, everyone, and stay tuned for some more great episodes, including Stephen D. Edward, Rick Beck, Carissa Gregorio, and more. Until next time, stay glassy.